What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of The Lead. In a very special episode, your host, as always, Harley Dugan, and I am not going to take long with this. Without further ado, get that interview rolling. Mr. Future Astros Hall of Famer Bill Brown got to talk with me a few days ago about what should be happening with the Astros offseason, the future of the Houston Astros, the outfield situation, pitching, whatever questions y'all had as fans, I got most of them answered. Here we go. Welcome to the channel, Bill Brown. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. Sorry that I forgot we were supposed to have done this a few days ago, so my apologies.
No problem whatsoever, my man. Welcome to The Lead. My name is Harley Dugan. I'm very excited and a little nervous to talk to you, Bill. Been with the Astros for 30 years as a broadcaster. First things first, I do want to introduce you as the future Astros Hall of Famer, Mr. Bill Brown.
Well, thank you.
You were with the Reds broadcast team that what I saw in your beginning years as a broadcaster, correct?
Yes.
I have to ask you, how great was Joe Morgan?
I think he was one of those unique players in the sense that he had power and speed, and he was extremely intelligent. And, I often have said he did not have a great arm, but he made up for it with how intelligent he was. And I don't know if you've seen this play, but he made this play with Dave Concepcion many times. I'm sure there are highlights of it where the ball would be grounded up the middle and Morgan would get to it near the second base bag, headed toward left field. He'd glove it on the backhand side, just flip it right out of his glove, would never take his bare hand at all and touch the ball, and he'd flip it up in the air, and Concepcion would be crossing, going over toward first base, would pick that ball out of the air with his bare hand and throw out the batter. And this kind of speaks to the fact that Joe knew it would be an extremely difficult play for him to make that throw off balance, headed in the wrong direction. So he just used his head and let Davey do it. And then I saw a play after Joe's passing on some highlight reels, and he did make a throw to first base on a similar play to that. So maybe I hadn't given his arm enough credit, but we talk about five-tool players. So he hit for batting average, that. For power, he had the speed, he had the fielding ability, and then the arm would be the fifth. So that one, depending upon your judgment, would or would not make him a five-tool player, but exceptionally rare. And the other thing I want to say about him is that he could have stolen many more bases than he did. He would typically steal 60, 65 bases. And he probably could have stolen 80 in a season if he had really wanted to. But if the game was one-sided, he did not run.
Wow. He was a 10-time All-Star, back-to-back MVP, 75 and 76, 5-time Gold Glover, being 5'7". He reminded me when I look at him, and of course every Astro fan knows, I think of Jose Altuve just because of the height aspect. What do you think about that comparison?
I think it is a basis for comparison. They were totally different players, but in terms of being shorter than just about anybody around, yes. And having overcome the obstacles that come from being small. And, I would say they both, because Joe was an undrafted free agent as Jose was. So I think Joe always had a fondness for Jose, as he said in interviews, just because of the stigma attached to being so short. So you have to overcome opinions that have been formed over decades by scouts and other people in baseball and prove to them that you are not only a good player, but a spectacular player, which they both have done. And I think that was what was great about seeing Joe come in for his induction into the Astros Hall of Fame, that people would ask him about Altuve and he would give those answers about it.
Rest in peace to Joe Morgan, passing away earlier a few months ago. And the Astro community in the Reds community, I believe, they really pour their hearts out for him. Great man. I never saw him, but I did see him when he got inducted to the Astros Hall of Fame along with you there, Bill. Well, when do you think you're going to get that call for be that 2020, 2021 Astros Hall of Famer?
Well, I am on a committee, so I do know a few things on the inside, but I don't think it's going to happen for a while. I don't even know what we're doing for 2021.
Yeah.
I know the person I want to go in is Tal Smith.
Yes.
And I've done a little lobbying on the committee, and I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. I think all of us agree that Tal Smith should be in. What happened was, as you know, in 2020, we had that big class, and they never got inducted because of the COVID and no fans being at games. So we still have to induct them in 2021. Yeah. So I think we've pretty well decided, and we haven't met for months, but we're due to probably meet again pretty soon, that we're going to get to be very selective now from this point on after the big class with Berkman and Oswalt and Cedeno and all those guys, that we're going to be really selective and keep it to maybe 1 or 2 people per season. So we felt like we had to play catch up since we were kind of late starting an Astros Hall of Fame with almost 60 years of club history, and that we needed to induct large numbers of people in the beginning, but we've done that. And so now I think it's going to get to be pretty tough to get in there. So I've asked the committee not to consider me because we already have Milo Hamilton and Gene Elston. We've got 2 broadcasters. So I think we're, we don't need any more broadcasters for a while now. So I'm not sure I can answer your question. I think it's going to be a while.
All right, then. All right. Well, we will be waiting for that day to come, though. We will be waiting. What is it like? You broadcasted them for 30 years. What was it like 2017?
2017, I had just retired after 2016, and I was still going to a lot of games, and I was just starting to get into photography more deeply. So quite often I took my camera down to games, and I was in the camera box down by one of the dugouts or somewhere else. And so it was really interesting to see the game from a much different perspective than being in the booth and being, 4 stories up. And now I'm, a few feet away from the third baseman and shooting photos and things like that. And it brought home the point to me, and you guys, I know you've probably sat pretty close to the field sometimes when you've gone to games, but broadcasters don't. They're a long way from the action.
Oh, yes.
The game looks easier the further removed you are from the playing field. I think you sort of, if you're broadcasting, you may lose a bit of an appreciation for the speed and the quickness of the game by being so far from it. But by being down there and shooting photos, I could just hardly believe the quickness that's required to be a good baseball player. And that gave me a whole new appreciation for that team because they were just so talented. They were, they kind of reminded me in ways of the Cincinnati Reds of the mid-'70s. They didn't win games 5-3. They won games 8-3, 10-3. And they had a lot of blowouts, as you know, but still, even though the competition got tougher in the playoffs and then on into the World Series, they were able to win and win the lower scoring games. So that to me is a sign of greatness for a team.
Oh, yes, for sure. And with that said, the Astros, they went to 4 straight years, including this year, to the ALCS. This year being the most improbable, going 29-31. Bill, just how does this team keep doing this?
They looked to me, it was kind of a sluggish look because so many guys were not hitting the way their baseball cards say they should be hitting. And I didn't know if they were worried about sign stealing scandal, living up to that, trying too hard to prove that they really were one of the elite teams and they didn't have to cheat to do what they did in 2017.
Yes.
I think they pretty well established that, in 2019 by what they did. with
Exactly.
no cheating having been ascertained whatsoever. But I don't know. There was something going on in their minds. I think with a bunch of them, whether they were letting that 2017 season weigh on them, or just, I've heard so many guys say, "Well, we were rushed getting ready. We didn't, we had the interrupted spring training and couldn't get our rhythm." So that may have been part of it. But for whatever reason, they were just sluggish as a team. I don't mean that they weren't trying hard. I think they may have been trying too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then I think they had all of us convinced come playoff time, well, they shouldn't even be in the playoffs, with their record, and then they proved that theory wrong. They really came alive.
Extremely exciting team. I grew up with the Astros. In 2005 was my team. And now, going and seeing this team into my early 20s, this is the most fun I've had as an Astro fan. How much fun have you had watching this team as an Astro fan?
Well, yeah, that's a good way to put it, because I've been more of a fan than, I'll just fill in as a broadcaster here and there. I didn't do any games last year, but I am more of a fan now, and I think it is extremely enjoyable. It's kind of, when you've been a broadcaster, it's kind of hard to sit there and watch as a fan. It's kind of nerve-wracking to sit there without having duties like broadcasting that you're used to doing. So I probably felt more of the anxiety of a fan the last few years following them, and it has been really enjoyable. But it's just it's all encompassing. When you sit down and watch a game and see all the twists and turns that it can take. Baseball, to me, has always been the best sport for that reason: the unpredictability of it, and the fact that as a fan, the more you know about the game, the more you're entertained by it.
So I do want to get into the off season for the Houston Astros, and we're just gonna go with the elephant in the room. Every Astro fan has been asking this: is George Springer coming back?
Well, my initial answer would be probably not, because I think it would have happened if they were going to sign him. It would have already happened. It gets very complex, and it gets to the point that now there are so many unknowns with budgets for next year. How many fans will be there, and I've heard it said by teams and by Major League Baseball that about 40% of most teams' revenues come from people being in the ballpark, and associated with that, parking, concessions, all that sort of thing. So, you take anybody's budget and cut 40% off it, and there are going to be some very difficult decisions to be made.
Yes.
I would guess that at some point there was an offer made by the Astros to George Springer. I don't know when, but now that he's 31, I'm also guessing that his agent probably is looking for something like a 5-year deal, perhaps. That's much tougher to do for a 31-year-old player than it is for a 28-year-old player.
Exactly.
Nonetheless, you're right, and the fans are right, that this guy means so much to this franchise. There would be a huge void if he wasn't on the team in 2021. So how do you settle the equation there? Well, they've got 163 million committed as is. So, will they go to 200 million on the payroll? I'm pretty certain they will not. The only way I could see that they could bring back George Springer would be to backload a contract, thinking that, okay, Verlander and Greinke are going into the final years of their deals in 2021. We don't know how much insurance money, if any, the Astros are getting for Verlander's contract, since he won't be able to play in 2021. But if they are getting a pretty good chunk of insurance money, that will enable them to make a better deal, obviously, for Springer or other players, Brantley or whoever else they deem a target for their team. But it seems that there's hardly any room to spend on Springer for next year. Well, there may be a way out if he or his agent could be convinced to take a small amount, relatively speaking, for 2021. And then when all this money comes off the books for 2022 and beyond, ramp him up to make much higher sums of money, and still it comes out to be an enormous deal in the long haul. Typically when players have not signed going into the free agent year, once that season starts, their opinion will be that they're not going to sign because they're so close to this process of having competitive bidding by all the teams that they want to commit to going through with it. So that possibly is where Springer and his agent are right now. I would assume so because it's happened to so many players in the past.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, will there be competitive bidding at a high level? I really doubt it. I honestly doubt it this winter.
Yeah. The Astros got another few moves to make. Another one being Mr. Michael Brantley, the professional hitter. Do you see the Astros at all? If Springer does walk, do they bring back Brantley? If not, then what do you think is the plan for the outfield?
I don't know, other than Kyle Tucker, what the plan could be for the outfield. Obviously, they would have a couple of huge holes to fill there, and one would think they would go onto the free agent market and see if they could get some bargains to try to do that. I don't see anybody currently on the infield moving to the outfield, nor do I see anybody in the minor leagues who's just breaking the pane of glass to get through and get into the lineup. So that's a really good question, and the fact that they did not offer a contract to Mr. Brantley and didn't give him the qualifying offer of $18.9 million.
Yep.
Means that I think it would be hard to read into that they're all that interested in signing him.
Yeah. But,
you may have suggested a path there that could happen if it's determined by them at some point that they cannot sign Springer. And Brantley is out there and doesn't have many offers. They certainly could revisit his situation. I would have thought they would have offered him the qualifying offer. But it's just, 2020, as we all joke about every single day, is such a weird year. Nothing would be too surprising.
Yeah, for sure. A few free agents that people have told me about that the Astros might look into, if not bringing back Springer and Brantley. The hot name I keep seeing is Jackie Bradley Jr. from the Boston Red Sox. We all saw what he did in Minute Maid Park in 2018 against us in the ALCS. Do you see Jackie Bradley Jr. having a future with the Astros?
I think it's possible. I don't know what his salary demands would be.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume they would be fairly high based on the career he's had, but it's been an uneven career. It's been a career with a great year a couple of years ago and then very much a down year this year. So I'm not sure what to expect of Jackie Bradley Jr., except that he is a top glove man in center field.
Yes.
But offensively, I don't see him producing the kind of numbers that George Springer does in an average Springer year. I really don't.
Another few names that people have looked at, of course, is our old fellowman from 2017, Mr. Charlie effin Morton. Do you believe Charlie Morton comes back, or do the Astros look at any starting pitching this offseason?
I would guess that Charlie Morton is going to either play for Tampa Bay for a reduced salary or retire.
Mm-hmm.
He lives very close to Tropicana Field there, and he's made it very clear how much he enjoys being at home and playing at home. I think he was actually strongly considering retirement before he signed with the Rays a couple of years ago.
Yes, he did.
And with his age and everything and injury history, I really don't know that he's a good fit anymore for the Astros. I think they're probably committed to the Christian Javier's of the world, and it was such a good season for the rookie pitchers who came along.
Well, yes.
That I think they're committed to having those pitchers be major contributors to their pitching staff in 2021.
With that, so the starting five you're looking at next year is someone like Framber Valdez, Greinke, Lance McCullers, Jose Urquidy, and then the fifth guy could possibly be Christian Javier. You had a rookie bullpen this year. What do you see coming from the pitching side, from the bullpens aspect and the starting pitching aspect? Do you think we see another good year of Framber Valdez? And the second question being, what do you see from this bullpen coming into year two?
I think Valdez, yes, will be a mainstay of this pitching staff. I think he's capable of building on what he did. He's really stood up under postseason pressure, so definitely he is going to be one of the linchpins of this pitching staff. I think Javier will be counted on to be a starting pitcher in the rotation. I think they're going to have to redo the bullpen. Closer situation kind of up in the air. Presley is okay. I think the club is better if it gets somebody who's been a closer longer than Presley and using him as the eighth inning man. They've already signed Brooks Raley and they're bringing him back. I think Redis will be a good option in the late innings, but I do think they need more depth. And there is a large crop of free agent relievers out there. So I think the assumption would be they can probably get a pretty good bargain with some experience who can help them out.
Yes, for sure. The name I keep looking at is Alex Colomé. Alex Colomé was with the Tampa Bay Rays during James Click's years. He's a guy I see the Astros bringing in. Click also mentioned that he is looking for 95 plus mile per hour fastball guys. Not saying that's solely the only guys he's looking at, but he did mention that. What is your take on that? And do you think Alex Colomé is a name to look at?
I think yes, he is, and I think as far as the 95, that's pretty much industry standard. I think that James Click, when he said that, was thinking about somebody come in and blow hard for one inning. And so that's probably something that would be readily available. I think there will be several of those guys on the open market. Yes. And if the offers are similar, I think a lot of players would be inclined to play for the Astros. They're a very good team right now, and I think players who want to win are attracted to teams like the Astros. And so I think they could get someone, for a reasonable amount of money.
Other rumors I've seen is with George Springer leaving, I've seen where he potentially goes to Boston, which we'll talk about later with Boston, and the New York Mets with this new owner. There was always that thing that these teams they're kind of afraid to bring in someone from that 2017 Astros team. Is that true at all?
I don't see it. I think with the 3 years that have passed, I don't see that happening. I think that Springer is a proven player. I think, it's very hard for people to figure out who did what in 2017. We've never really seen any specifics of how many players benefited more than others. We've seen that Altuve hardly benefited at all in terms of not wanting to know what signs were given. But beyond that, it's all guesswork. So I think that with the passage of time, the fans, yes, there are going to be fans who will never like George Springer. We know that. But, I think with the Red Sox, and he's a local guy for them, that their fans would embrace somebody like George.
No, yes, for sure. And speaking of the Red Sox, there was some breaking news today with Alex Cora going to be the manager for the Boston Red Sox. To me, that's just kind of weird looking at that. I don't know. I want to know what you think about that.
I am conflicted with that because I'm not too sure of exactly what Alex Cora has done behind the scenes to get suspended. I think he played a very heavy role in the Astros situation, certainly. Instigating their system. That's been fairly well documented. I'm not fully sure of what he did with the Red Sox, but my guess is he was immersed in it.
Yes.
And so for that reason, I am somewhat surprised that they would bring him back.
Yeah, I was extremely surprised as well. And now that begs the question that fans have not only asked me, but have asked all over Astros Twitter. Why did the Astros not look at bringing back A.J. Hinch?
Jim Crane made a very quick decision on that. And, of course, he has knowledge that you and I don't have. But I think part of that thinking would have been, all right, are we able to get past this completely if we bring back the manager from that season? Or is that going to cause more problems down the road when we go on the road to different cities and people will not let us forget it? Or are we better turning the page and saying, hey, we've made changes since then, and we're not the same team, we're not under the same leader. If we get a new leader who can't be connected to anything like what happened in 2017, then maybe we have a better chance for people to forget this and move on. Maybe not forget, but not have it, on the top shelf of their to-do list. Boo the Astros.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we saw a lot of that in just the little glimpse of spring training we had. That was a very, I don't know if you were there in spring training watching them, but I saw a lot of fans that were really upset, and really upset is an understatement. The one question I do want to get into is next year for the Houston Astros. Yordan Alvarez will be back. What do you think? Because you got about your lineup hitting wise, 1 through 6 is set, and then you'll probably have Maldonado somewhere between 7th and 9. And with the question mark at outfield, do you think the Astros at all are finished?
No, I don't think they're finished. It's hard to say that Verlander would ever pitch again effectively for the Astros with his contractual situation. I think Greinke is capable of a fine year. And it's tough to say, about the young guys we talked about earlier. What can they do if they're in the rotation for a full season? But I think they certainly deserve a chance. Bullpen needs some work. Offensively, there are question marks now in the outfield, 2 big question marks in the outfield. So they would have to, shore that up some. And if you assume that Alvarez is capable of putting together the kind of season he did in his rookie of the year, then, you wouldn't need 2 offensive powerhouses, one in right and one in center field. You could go for more of a contact hitter type, good defensive player, and possibly be okay offensively if your pitching was good enough. So I wouldn't be willing to say, I think 2022 would be the year that people are going to look at and point to and say, well, they're going to need to do some restructuring when they get to that point. But for me, I think 2021 is still potentially could be a good season for them.
I think so too. I think, and maybe I just got the Astro goggles on, but I think this team is really doing a phenomenal job, and I think they could go into a few more years of not only being competitive, but potentially getting another World Series ring to Houston. Another thing I want to ask, and this is one of the last questions that I have for you, is the Astros don't have no first and second round picks. The signing of Pedro Leone. Do you know who Pedro Leone is?
I do, and he's one of the top. He's probably the top international free agent outfielder. So I see where you're headed with this.
Yes.
Could he be in the starting lineup in 2021?
Yes.
I don't know why not. I know it sounds a little weird to some people, but if he's as good as the reports say, typically what happens when an organization brings in a player like him, because he's an unknown commodity here in the States, the way that they look at it is he's got to prove himself in spring training.
Yes.
But if they're as convinced as they seem to be from what you and I are reading about him, and they're about to shell out big dollars for him.
Oh, yeah.
Then, if he goes through spring training and shows that he can handle life with a major league club, wouldn't be shocking to see him as a starting outfielder for this team.
Not at all. It gives me goosebumps thinking about Pedro Leone, looking at the small numbers he had, and what he did, and potentially being in the outfield with a Kyle Tucker, and then whatever else they do at center field. Another name people have mentioned is Jake Marisnick, a reuniting of him. Do you think that's a possibility at all?
I don't know why not, because if they feel that in Alvarez he's going to be a top form the way he was in his rookie year, you look at the offense from this year, and almost every single player underproduced what he would do in a normal season. So you would, if you've been around baseball for a long time, you're following these players every year. What would be your way of looking at Jose Altuve, at Yuli Gurriel, at Alex Bregman, at Carlos Correa? Should all of them have better years under normal baseball progress through a career than they did last year? Yes. Yes, they should. So if you're going to take that into your planning and say, well, if all four of our infielders are going to have better seasons, and Alvarez is going to return, and Tucker is going to be maybe a little bit better than he was because of his experience. How much more offense is this team really going to need?
Exactly. That's what I keep saying. There's, there's a lot of Debbie Downers out there, Bill, about the Astros and their potential future. And, with the Correa contract coming up, with you having to pay him, do you see the Astros opening up the checkbook for Carlos Correa?
I would think they would mount an all-out effort to sign him.
Easy.
Yes, I would see that happening.
I totally agree with you. Totally.
It's because, and a lot of it is because of what we saw from him with his leadership, not only his playing skills.
With him mentoring Valdez there, I saw it more as a leader mentor kind of thing. With when I think it was Diaz from the Rays, tried to, I guess, start something with Framber Valdez, and I know every Astro fan literally just, I got goosebumps, and he started getting tears in my eyes seeing how Correa and his leadership in mentoring these young pitchers, not only Framber Valdez, the other pitchers as well. He has really became a true leader from this team. A lot of guys, you had a lot of fans wondering, should we, keep him or not because of his injury history. And I think he has really put that to rest. What do you think?
I would tend to agree with you, and I don't like young players who have injury history problems and they're missing 50 and 60 games a year. I don't think anybody does, but you have to realize that he's capable. He has as much ability as any shortstop of the game right now. So then it's all about staying healthy. Okay, why is he getting injured? Well, he's had some freakish things that have happened, but it's not for lack of effort. It's not anything that he's really failed to do for the most part. So I think he plays the game hard, and there are going to be injuries that are accompanying that with players, as there have been with Springer.
Yes.
So would he be the new face of the franchise? Yes, I could see that happening. Now, the thing that we can't possibly answer is, what are player values going to be 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now? The problem that I see developing with any star player in the game is tying his present value to the values that players have been establishing in the free agent market the last 5 years, we'll say. Are those values going to remain in play? I don't see any way. This is a new normal now with 2020 and going forward. With fans, we'll say, let's just say the teams in Texas are allowed to have 11,000 fans per game. Well, there's no way you could justify paying the kinds of dollars that teams are currently paying their star players well into the future until they can have it established that they're packing ballparks again. It just will not happen. Reality gets in the way of that. And, if you believe the figures that Major League Baseball has put out, that the industry lost $3 billion. So the average of the 30 teams is losing $100 million does it make any sense for you to sign a player to a $300 million deal for 6 or 7 years? I don't think it does. So the player and agent are going to have to look very deeply into reality to get good deals, not what has been signed recently. You know, we're not talking about Mookie Betts deals. I do not see any of those deals going forward for many, many years.
Okay. Well, I know you know who J.P. Crawford is. A lot of fans don't know who J.P. Crawford is. I was extremely upset that Mr. Los Correa was robbed of the Gold Glove. What do you think about that, Mr. Bill Brown?
I would say, and I know the standards were different this year, the coaches and managers did not vote this year. They did it purely by statistics.
Defensive metrics by the Fielding Bible, accordingly.
Terrible, terrible, terrible way of determining a Gold Glove. Couldn't we get the top 100 scouts in baseball and have them vote? They would know better than defensive metrics who is the best shortstop or second baseman. Terrible way of determining the winner of that award. And we watched the guy make one error all long, had tremendous range, best arm of any shortstop. I'm trying to think of a shortstop, you know, in my time in the game with a better arm, and I can't come up with anybody. Well, Sean Dunston had a great arm, but honestly, he made a lot of bad throws too. Carlos, I mean, you make one error. Yeah, Yuli will save you a few errors at first base, granted, but still, one error all year and for me, making that relay throw from the outfield to home plate, there's nobody any better.
No, and none better. I was extremely upset, as many as all the fans were, for J.P. Crawford. Yuli not getting the Gold Glove. I mean, slightly upset, but deservingly, Carlos Correa should have got that Gold Glove. He was really robbed. I saw a lot of players like Reddick and Maldonado a little upset about that. But I'm going to ask you the last question of the day, Mr. Bill Brown. Who's your favorite person to broadcast with? Was it JD? Was it Durker? I'm going to put you on the spot here.
I'm going to go with JD, and Larry Durker is one of my best friends. And I think he would understand, and I don't think, Dirk really cares that much, but he was a fantastic partner. And he really taught me the game more than any other partner I've ever had. Larry really taught me the game by doing games with him, just how sharp he was, how well he thought ahead. And we worked together for 10 years, JD and I for 16 years. I couldn't say that there was ever a bad day with either one of them. And I learned so much from both of them. But I think for some reason with JD and I, our personalities just seemed to mesh in such a way that, we were having fun. And I was having fun with Larry also, but I'm trying to give you an honest answer, so I'm going to go with JD.
Well, I do want to thank you, Mr. Bill Brown. This is all the fans, all the Astro fans that have watched you over the years. They want to thank you as well. This is huge for me and huge for my channel, and I really do appreciate your time being on here.
Well, thank you for bearing with me on our failed attempt last week. I'm glad we got it done finally, and it's been a pleasure to be on with you. And I wish you all the best on your channel, and hope the fans flock to see you.
Yes, sir. No problem. I do thank you for that. And as always, guys, go Astros, go Rockets, go Texans. This is Harley Dugan in the Texas Sports Hall of Famer, future Astros Hall of Famer, whether he wants it or not, Mr. Bill Brown, signing off.